Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience episode number 187.
Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards, Director of the Building Green Initiative and Sustainability Coordinator at Clark Atlanta University. Our next guest is Felicia M. Davis. Welcome.
Good morning, Dr. Richards. It's so wonderful to be with you this morning and glad to be on your podcast.
Thank you. You are so welcome for that. Felicia, you have such an extensive bio. Why don't you share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business?
Sure. So I have been working in the environmental arena for exactly 20 years this year. I came to work on climate change from the kind of civic arena, working in civil rights, social justice. And so for 20 years, I've been working to engage the Black community around issues related to climate change. And then the last 10 years, working within the higher education sector specifically, and very intensely looking at historically Black colleges and universities and how improving the infrastructure at those institutions reduces climate emissions and improves the campus and impacts the surrounding community. So looking at Black colleges as economic anchors for Black communities.
Now, we know climate control is a hot topic right now, and it's really been in the news in the forefront. And you said you've been in this work for 20 years. Talk about being an African-American woman and how did that intercept your world to get into this work?
There were a significant number of Black people that were engaged around environmental justice issues, toxics and dumping and that sort of thing. Very, very, very few involved, although there were some, but we were definitely small in number in terms of the global warming or climate arena. So early on, I guess we had to focus more on air pollution because issues such as asthma and people can remember going back to acid rain. So pollutants like SOx, NOx, mercury, we eat fish, that was a concern. Well, those issues are very much connected to climate, but people generally have a feeling like, well, the climate is always changing, and you relate to climate a little bit as though it's weather. So it's been a long curve engaging the Black community around the issue, but we're more environmentally aligned than any Black and Latino communities, kind of environmentally conscious and support green. We come out of kind of an agricultural feeling. We may not have a garden, but we can reflect back to somebody who did. That's kind of in our DNA. So over time, and we're also strong advocates when it comes to justice and what is right, both for people and the planet. But it did take a little time to get the community on board and to elevate it because we just have so many issues to choose from. So just a plethora of challenges, and anything that's a challenge impacts us more. Certainly once Katrina hit, that kind of got people over the hump because we saw the extreme vulnerability of Black people. We saw what more intense or catastrophic climate looks like, and then start to take some of the science and predictions more seriously. And ever since Katrina, the numbers have been growing. Young people are on board. They get it. So the nature of the work has changed a bit. It's still a big problem. And I would say in the United States, we are comparatively slow to move.
Speaking of a plethora of issues that we're dealing with, talk about the work that you're doing and COVID-19.
With COVID-19, I think first of all, I work with a number of historically Black colleges and universities. Not the most, like, we didn't have the most kind of online or distance learning. And Black College was known for its in-person experience. So when COVID and the shutdown hit, it meant that colleges and universities that weren't already online had to immediately ramp up and provide access to distance learning opportunities, not for some students, but for all students across multiple campuses. And that was accomplished. So I'm most familiar with Clark Atlanta University, but Morehouse, Spelman, faculty at Florida A&M, Tennessee State, Nick Coppin. So up and down the HBCU arena, talking with faculty who went from classes that were live to delivery online and making that transition, both the faculty and students, I think was a fairly amazing accomplishment. And post shutdown, those same campuses are looking at how they come back in the fall. For example, students that may have dormitories that may have been two to a room, and you have your economics and projections based on that density. Now, thanks to COVID, you can only be one to a room. People have to be monitored and tested and all sorts of sanitizing, kind of a very different revenue model, even if it's just, you can't bring as many students back into the spaces, et cetera, et cetera. Looking at all of these challenges that different from a restaurant, but similar. You know, you can't have as many tables, or you have to protect the staff, you have to protect the client. And then for colleges and universities, faculties are older. It's been a big challenge to adjust to COVID. And then there's also the research end. You also have faculty and like Morehouse School for Medicine, for example, also looking at testing and contact tracing and adaptation and, you know, reagents for testing and on and on. So Black colleges have been adapting and looking at adaptation going forward, because you don't know how long we'll be in this sort of arena. You know, how long will be social distancing? So that's been very interesting, and looking at ways that the community, as well as faculty, staff, alumni, can be supportive Black colleges as they make these transitions. And I think in some ways there'll be no going back. So there's been some good things, good dividends from a challenging situation.
What are you most grateful for right now in your life, Felicia?
I'd say friends and family. I really appreciate, I have good, strong relationships with both friends, family, and associates. And I know people who don't. So it adds a kind of richness to my life that I never want to take for granted. But it makes every day a joy, really, even without focusing on the joy or I'm happy, but knowing that all of my relationships are really rich, very honest, and very supportive. So I'm grateful for that.
So the business you're running, it's a nonprofit. Talk about to our audience about setting up a nonprofit.
So setting up a nonprofit, I would say the most important thing, well, there's a few important things. One is to have a very good board. So, and very good in terms of the resources that they bring and the support that they give and their commitment to the mission of the nonprofit. To the extent that's possible, having a clearly defined mission is important. And nonprofit, I always tell people, nonprofit is kind of a tax designation, right? And that's exactly what it is for tax purposes. So it doesn't mean that A, it's not profitable, because that would be ridiculous. And two, it's mission aligned work. So the reason it's not tax is because it's making that, it's using the resources to benefit society. So within that, thinking all of the attributes of any business apply to a nonprofit business. When I say picking the board, that's number one. Then after that, clarity in terms of mission, and then a plan that one executes, and paying attention to the mistakes so that you don't make them again, but you will make mistakes. I think creating anything new and growing it.
So when we think of nonprofits, and I know that when you're vetting your board, what advice would you give for vetting your board?
Advice that I give, I don't know that I've always taken it, but in helping others to set up their nonprofit, a different approach that I use with my own, but I suggest you have to look at access to resources. And that old thing of not what you know, but who you know. You need what and who on your board. So that means you don't have to have a banker, but you might want to at least have somebody who knows of it. You will need legal support. You'll need accounting support even for the smallest nonprofit. If that question you have on the list of if you knew now or what would you share, good record keeping. Good record keeping is fundamental. And if you don't do that well, just saying it doesn't make it happen. If that's not your thing, having someone in place that is their thing. And that's for financial records and others. So you want to be able at any time to pull up what's needed. Then embedding people. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to know everybody on your board well, but you have to know, you have to invite them and have a relationship with them, but it doesn't, you don't have to be kind of best friends. They need to be supportive of you and supportive of the mission, broadly or specifically, and if they're passionate, even better. It's not a bad idea to have a person that either has wealth or at least understands it, because a lot of times, oftentimes you start nonprofits without being a person of wealth. So it's good to have someone around that is both educating you, leading the way, and has relationships to people who can afford to support you. And that's what is in the foundation. And to me, everything is relationships. So yes, foundation or an individual asking them to support, I'm looking at what's in it for them. Why would they, what is it about what I'm doing that they would want to support? Because it's always a relationship. So those are just things that I would share. I think that relates to any business.
And if you had to do it all over again in 2020, would you go the route for your business as a nonprofit? And if yes, why?
Yes. When I go the route as a nonprofit, is a part of the HBCU Green Fund that seeks to reignite the spirit that the Black community has had over many years to invest and endow and build our own communities and institutions. And one of the most important places to ignite, reawaken, or amplify that is within the Black college space. Over recent times, the community has come to expect someone else to support. So whether it's the government to support Black colleges or the wealthy to support, our institutions are built, maintained, and sustained by our small, conscious, consistent commitment to those institutions. And it's not that people say, oh, well, why now students can go anywhere. I think this is true. But there are institutions that are our own, that are havens and places where, for example, for a student, you don't have to consider at all whether race or racism is an issue. So it's a nice home base that is not for every Black student or every student, but I believe that we must make our own institutions strong. So in that regard, that's a kind of investment that I think any successful Black person, I can't imagine. I don't think you have to have gone to a Black college. I think for me, success means that you are contributing to Black people being educated. I would think any successful person, doesn't matter if it's $10 or $10,000, but you would make an annual, some people do that through the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but I would think any conscious Black person would do that. And I do believe from a not-for-profit standpoint, we as a community should do that more. So that's a long-winded yes. At the same time, I also look at the arena that's contracted. So building and maintaining institutions that flourish, that's really an investment opportunity. It may not generate market returns, but it is an investment with a return. So there is a profitable side of any enterprise that's that large. You're hiring lots of people, you're managing lots of things. There are all sorts of economies within the scope. If you're looking at a Howard, a Hampton, Clark Atlanta University Center, these are really big enterprises. So there's also, colleges are not for profit, but they are also enterprises that have to be profitable as from a business sense.
Absolutely. So when we look at HBCUs and other majority schools, and we know that they've started hundreds of years before we started our institutions, and they have very large endowment funds. How do we get our HBCUs where they're operating from that revenue point?
So if we go all the way back, if we're looking at the Harvards and the Yale, even in the news lately, Yale was a slaver. Many of the Harvards and the Georgetowns started endowments and built their institution with revenues that came in one way or another related to slavery. And now those institutions have built, comparatively speaking, enormous endowment. As we look at it, kind of dates back in some ways to the start. I argue and appeal to very well-endowed institutions to invest in historically Black colleges and universities. I used to say 1% from their endowment, following the lead Robert Smith, the billionaire that I admire, of the 2% solution over a decade would transform Black higher education, would help Black colleges to build the kind of endowments. For example, Harvard's endowment approaches $40 billion. So they make $1 billion every year or more from their endowment. If you look at Black colleges, if you add all the endowments together, it will range between 1 and 2 billion for 100 institutions. That's a huge gap. But if you add up the top, take only the institutions that benefited from slavery, take 2% from their endowments, invest it in HBCUs, and not as a gift or favor or even social consciousness or anything, that will benefit all of society, right? If we make the extent to which we strengthen Black colleges that are existing in Black communities, and we bring that level up, what does that mean? These are institutions whose missions are defined to address issues that are impacting Black people. And while we may be 400 years from the first enslavement, that impact is also 400 years deep. So working together hand in glove, I think higher education institutions can help deconstruct the mindset that says that people of African descent are less than any other people. That construct is embedded deeply within the American and kind of European psyche. And in addition to sharing the wealth, which we help to build, so it's a sharing, also deconstructing a very, very flawed narrative that many Black people overcome, do fairly well. But if we look at the COVID-19, for example, racism is the reason that Black people are dying more than other people from COVID. It just is. It's not something to whine about, something to be conscious of and look at how are we going to deconstruct the systemic problem that has, my pain is not real pain because I'm not as human as the next person. That has to be eliminated. The knee on the neck.
And speaking of knee on the neck, and with the Black Lives Matter, the protests, the marching, how is that impacting or intercept the work that you're doing?
I'm pleased the young people getting in the street created a moment, and that has the potential to be a movement, but created a moment where all of these things are elevated. So I won't say my days of marching are over, but I've come to the point where I know to support these young people in other ways and that they need support, guidance, direction, and also they're the vanguard. So I also have to learn ways to follow what may be their lead. There's a kind of awareness and understanding that's coming from quote-unquote white people that I have really never seen on as broad a scale. So they created the space to talk about issues that we really have not been able to address in this way. And they're causing resource distribution and support for Black-led and people of color-led initiatives, organizations. So that's amazing. And they haven't given up. So they didn't do a march, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They hit the streets and they stayed out there. It's a wonderful thing to see. And it's creating a whole new arena of opportunity. I think those of us who are seasoned also know it's the moment could also be a moment. And there could be backlash there, who knows, around the corner. But in this particular moment, it's bear down, buckle up, and do our best. So bring our best to support these young people, our best to address the real underlying issues. our best to look at the least of these without the opportunity to look at criminal justice, look at impacts, look at health impacts, and let's bring it. We know some of the answers. So these young people have created the space for us to bring our best. And I just feel like, wow, we have to do that.
So how do we capitalize on the movement and don't make it a moment, but how do we see not just capitalizing on, which is a good thing in terms of change, but also the financial implications? How do you turn that into a moment of movement of money?
Money is moving. I think that for me, I'll speak in terms of myself on a personal level. There was a time when I thought in terms of millions, right? Because millions were a lot. Not so long ago. So, it says something about maybe my station in life, but I think even a decade ago, 10 million or 100 million, that was a lot. I was aware of billions, but still millions were a lot. And then I'd say sometime around when Obama came in, so it was that 08, 10, maybe the last 12 years, a little more, after we went through the crash, then it seemed like billions, right? Billions was the thing. In order to come out of the toxic assets and all this, we needed billions. Oh, okay, billions. Billions is the thing. And now that we've had COVID, I met other people, but the T word was not in my vocabulary. And I'm going to be very honest. I cannot honestly conceptualize $1 trillion. So for me to talk and think and work in the realm of trillions, I have to pause, kind of almost write out all the zeros, look at it to work myself into the meaning. So right now in this moment, what COVID taught me, money is not the issue. Money is not the issue. I hope to never be fooled about that. Scarcity is a flaw. That is I would use a very negative word to say what that is that's been shoveled to us. That's not the problem. The problem is commitment, focus. What are we trying to get done? Because that's not the problem, which is a wonderful thing to learn. That's what trillions taught me. Oh, well, wait a minute. We didn't, one moment we had a sequester, and the next moment we'll just materialize. 1, 2, 5, 10, however many trillion we need. There it is. Money's not the problem. It's not that it's printed in the basement. It's just that it's not the problem. The problem is, what do we do with it? What do we do with it? And that's our energy, our ingenuity. Doesn't mean that, it just rains down on you. But once you understand that that's not the problem, then acquiring the capital, that is a problem. So that's a problem, but that's solvable. And then with acquiring the capital, how you hold and grow it, that's another one. But it's a very different orientation than the thought that there's not enough anyway. And once we know there's plenty, then you go and get what's needed. So that's, in this COVID moment, I don't know, I think everybody got that point. Because we materialized trillions overnight. Boom.
That's a huge value bomb, Felicia. And money is not the problem. It's the mindset. And we, as African Americans, as you said, not all, we don't categorize all, but a lot of us have been under that scarcity mentality, which has put us into supposedly we don't help each other, but that's a fallacy too. So money is out there. Money is moving. The message is you have to follow the money and you have to seize the opportunity. And like Felicia said, you have to be focused, know what you want and go get it. And it's no scarcity.
I'm feeling that money's not the problem, it's the mindset. I'm going to quote Dr. Richards on that one, yes.
I love that.
Love it.
How can we support you right now? What can our audience do right now, Felicia, to support your business?
So HBCU Green is like, right now, really, when you're talking, you have a right now moment. You shouldn't be like me and say, in a minute, how I'm going to say in a minute. But the first thing, this fall, HBCU Green Fund is launching a campaign that's basically saying everybody that can contribute $10. And so people will say, oh, well, Oprah's an alum, she can do more than $10. No, I don't give you Oprah or Taraji or Common or the whole list of everybody, athletes, etc. No, just $10 and then hit their social media. And there's about 250,000 HBCU students. We want, on an annual basis, minimally for a particular pot that we want to work with, $10 on behalf of every student. That's only a couple $1 million. However, we're looking to invest also, in addition to infrastructure and other things that we do, we're also looking to invest in the ideas of our students and young people. So if you look at what makes Stanford or MIT, part of the greatness is that their support for the innovation of students. And what does that mean? That means I get to come out the gate when I think I can fly. 18, 22, 25, 30, you don't just think this is going to work. It might not. You might have an Apple or a Microsoft or a dud. So we want our young people to be able to identify, hey, yeah, we think that'll work. And we support that. And if it flies, it's an investment. If it fails, it was a grant. That'll empower some young people because we also know, those of us, whether you're in business or not, if you live long enough, you'll know that life is a series of successes or failures depending upon how you look at them. So looking backwards, it's like, what I thought was a failure was, that was the step I need to take to get here. So that we will launch in the fall. We're announcing now because we want everybody to let that marinate. And while it's marinating, your own thing that you need to do to contribute to or be about a Black college, if you're an accomplished Black person, you don't have to be Robert Smith to give $10 to an HBCU. You don't have to be rich and famous to have a favorite HBCU. Follow something, somebody, and support, because education is still important with all of our innovation. And I tell people, I'm just as impressed with a young person having a business and growing it. But education is more than a pathway to a job, a business, or a career. Education develops the individual. So we have to invest in that. So right now, in order to support me, anybody hearing my voice, number one, support an HBCU. And if you're already doing that, do a little more. That's what my voice said. Because if you do that, you're going to remember me in the fall, and you're going to be on board, and we're going to be on fire. So that's kind of my message, and I'm starting early with that because it takes time to cultivate people. And I'm an advocate and activist in that way, and consistency is everything.
So we will definitely be supporting, Felicia, your campaign. And so I have a couple of questions behind that. Can they give the $10 now?
Yes, because we have a website, HBCUgreenfund.org, and there's a donate button. And now is always good. The other thing is anyone can reach me directly, and I always share, I'm an old school kind of cell phone person. I have an interesting email address. It's I ask, because I ask for as much as I can get, but I ask at the IASK at bellsouth.net. so people can be in touch with me directly, because in addition to money, and money gets you things that you need. There are other ways. We partner fairly extensively, and there are other ways that we invite support. We're kind of nationwide, even though HBCUs are primarily in the South. So I encourage people, they reach out. I'm Felicia Davis. You can reach me at iaskabellsouth.net. I also share my cell phone pretty liberally. So having conversations and building relationships, because as people listen and think about, we have people that are HBCU alum, we have folks that went to other institutions but still want to support. I really appreciate having the opportunity to connect and see how folk can become a part of our network. So that's kind of a priority for us, building from now until September when we launch. So that's one thing. And partnering, we will have September 23rd through 26th. The National Technical Association, that's the oldest organization of Black architects, engineers, so it's 92 years old. So they will have their virtual conference, and we will be launching kind of in conjunction with that. So that's one way. So reaching out to me directly, because if I'm here saying, $10 or contributions, that's easy, and we take that. But in this moment, as we're building, we are gearing up for a campaign that we're calling massive. And like I said, this is a mind growing from million to billion to trillion. So connecting with us, and depending on your expertise, which I can't tell over Skype, would be a great thing. There are events and activities that used to be in person and are now virtual. So I'm happy the September one, that ntaonline.org, and you can go in and register. That's faculty, students, a lot from the STEM area. We're also involved in a couple of Africa projects. So as we're working with HBCUs, we work in communities here in the U.S. We also have a couple of projects in West Africa, specifically Senegal and Ghana, especially Ghana. So for folks that are out there that have that diaspora view, and maybe on the continent or elsewhere, we have activities where from an HBCU or an African American perspective, we're reaching out to the diaspora, and that includes Africa, South America, and the Caribbean. So the U.S. Virgin Islands, we're doing some things in Colombia, so really active globally. So we're trying to be and cultivate Black people as global citizens, fully empowered, resource rich, and building. That's who we are. And we are just trying to manifest who we are fully and completely. And, whatever we need, manifest that.
Felicia, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer.
Oh, I was ready for that one, because a question guides my life. So I ask going into anything, if we get it right, what will it look like? So coming into any situation, if we get it right, what will it look like? So with the HBCU Green Fund, for me, if I get it right, Black colleges will be endowed as well as any other institution. Black colleges will flourish in a way that the institution and the community, the impact on the community, we solve problems. Whatever problem we find in the community, the university. That is its mission, to solve problems. So for me, if I get it right, I've contributed to making that happen. And then, so I imagine I imagine what it means to be free, what it means to walk in our authentic selves, with that halo of light, being those divine beings, being respectful and loving to one another, which is glowing. So for me, if we get it right, that's what it looks like. It's so beautiful, and people could say that's a beloved community. I think that's the natural state of humans. Yes, problems will come, but we have the ability to solve them. We work on them together and joyously, and I honestly believe and see that is the particular peculiar role that I think African Americans can fill. So I think we've had the experiences we've had for a reason. I think it's what humanity needed, us to have that experience, and we were strong enough to have it, go through it, and bring everybody forward with us. So that's, if I get it right, that's what it's looking like.
I love that. We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
I'm ready, I think. I'm sitting up. Okay, yes.
The last movie you saw?
Elevator Baby, an African movie.
You relax doing what?
Relaxing. Laid back, probably watching an independent film.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Stevie Wonder or Bob Marley or anybody else, but yes.
Your favorite dance song?
Cupid Shuffle, because it does make me get up and dance, not that it's a great song.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Salad. I eat a lot of salad.
Your favorite month?
February, my birthday month.
Hit the gym or hit the couch?
Hit the couch, wishing I was hitting the gym.
Felicia Davis, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, share with our audience the best way that they can connect with you and do business with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Richards. This has been a joy. It's really been an experience. So a lot of times you get interviewed and it's all coming out. I'm making notes from you as you're interviewing me, so that's a very different flip on the script, and I appreciate you for that. It's really been an experience, and I thank you. So for reaching me, my email address is I as in igloo, A alpha, S Sam, K kite. So I ask at bellsouth.net. And that's the old Bell South, like the phone company used to be. I ask at bellsouth.net. It's the best way to reach me. And please do. Anybody, if your heart is moved hearing my voice, know that I connect genuinely and for all kinds of reasons. So if you have a notion to reach out, do, and I will absolutely reach back. And again, Dr. Richards, this has been such a blast. I can't wait. I'm telling everybody about your podcast. This is great. So thank you for having me.
My pleasure. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.